I definitely understand why people are skeptical and anxious and angry, and I wouldn't encourage them to go to sleep.
I don't want nobody to give me nothing. Open up the door, I'll get it myself. I don't want nobody to give me nothing. Open up the door, I'll get it myself. I don't want nobody to give me nothing. Open up the door, I'll get it myself. Do you hear me? I don't want nobody to give me nothing. Open up the door, I'll get it myself. Don't give me integration, give me true communication. Don't give me sorrow, I want equal opportunity to live tomorrow. Give me schools and give me better books, so I can read about myself and gain my true looks. I don't want nobody to give me nothing. Open up the door, I'll get it myself. Do you hear me now? I don't want nobody to give me nothing. Open up the door, I'll get it myself. Some of us try as hard as we can. We don't want no sympathy, we just wanna be a man. I don't want nobody to give me nothing. Open up the door, I'll get it myself. Do you hear me?
All right, greetings, family. Welcome to another edition of Baba TV Every Time Fire. And it's my absolute pleasure to be in the company of these two warriors in their own right. One of them I'm just getting acquainted with, just meeting here. He's the attorney general, right, for the, I like to say the attorney general for the 81 project, and among other things, he wears many hats. I just attended his Hanover Thursdays, and he's a DJ, beatbox master. He's got a whole lot of hats that he's wearing. And aside of him is Captain Ahzanayah of the mighty ISUPK. Shout out to Commanding General Yohana and the generals, the captains, the officers, and troopers of the mighty ISUPK. Now, a lot of this, like Joe Driscoll, although shout out to Westcott Street. I'm a native of Westcott Street. Yes, yes. And kind of like Joe, I left Syracuse one way and came back to it another way. I'm a 70s baby. I grew up in the 70s up on Westcott, so I remember togetherness. I remember all those things, and so, but I'm used to getting thrown around in adverse situations, so I can deal with it. So with that being said, I'm done running my mouth. I just wanted to give my little introduction. I want to turn this over to Captain Ahzanayah.
Yep, Captain Ahzanayah, the ISUPK, with Joe Driscoll.
Yes.
Can you please just let the people know your position and connection to Project 81?
Yes, so I'm the city's project director is my title, but it's a bit of a misleading title. I'm more of the advocate and kind of the lead liaison. So the state is enacting the highway project. My role is to look at the city and the city fabric, the way it affects the city, and kind of advocate for what the city hopes to see out of the project. And so working with the state very closely to try to push for wider sidewalks, more crosswalks, and through that with my partner Sarah, looking at housing opportunity, fighting displacement. One of the grants we just wrote is about we just secured $2.5 million to try to increase entrepreneurs of color in the corridor as the new 81 takes root, trying to do some restorative justice and economic justice with increasing African American presence from locals in the economic development that happens as well.
Okay, excellent, excellent.
Yeah.
Now, you heard Baba say about him leaving and coming back. We had a conversation about that. All right, you and I went to the same elementary school.
Yes.
All right.
Little
but you
solace,
said, but you said something because you know my concern is my community. All right, black people in the city of Syracuse. But you said something to me before last week about you coming back to Syracuse, and can you elaborate on that or speak on that?
Yeah, I would say, you know, you and I grew up going to Solace School, and for those that went, it was very small classes, you know, probably 15 kids, 20 kids or something like that in a class. You know, the whole school probably had, I don't know, 150 kids or something like that in total for all the grades. And for me, you know, it was always Syracuse. As I traveled the world, you know, I moved to England in 2003, and I would tell people about this amazing city called Syracuse where there was no barriers or boundaries, and, you know, we all played in each other's backyards, and white, black, rich, poor, whatever, all people from different economic backgrounds, racial backgrounds, ethnic backgrounds, people whose English wasn't their first language. We all played together, and we had this kind of world, and that was Syracuse to me. But then I came back as an adult and kind of saw that that was my neighborhood and some of the families that I knew, but that Syracuse as a whole was quite different, and that we had some of the most racially and economically segregated census tracts in America, and that really disturbed me as a man coming back, because I had kind of grown up thinking Syracuse was this one place, and then kind of coming back and seeing it was a completely different place when I looked at the hard data and the numbers about how Syracuse does when it comes to opportunities for African Americans. It's not performing well. It's a very difficult city, a very segregated city, and so, you know, I came into politics through music. I started organizing fundraisers for Bernie Sanders when he ran for president. I was a big fan of single-payer health care. I still am. When he lost and Trump won, you know, one thing Bernie always said was, if you're upset with the way things look, run for local office, get involved, don't complain, pick up a shovel, try to change it. So I ran for 5th District Councilor, and then from there I did that for 4.5 years. A lot of my focus was on this project, was on 81, because I saw how transformative the 81 project was in the late 50s and 60s in creating the system that we now have, demolishing a lot of black-owned businesses, demolishing a lot of black-owned homes, and that combined with the system of redlining, denying African Americans loans, denying them home ownership, all of that was really accelerated through the 81 project. You know, bad policies were then, the gas was thrown on the fire, and we were left with this city that is very segregated and lacks opportunity for people of color. So that was, for me, I wanted to be as involved in this project as I can to try to do what I can, and like I said, oftentimes I feel like a man with a Dixie cup trying to change the flow of a river. But you know, but my favorite quote about politics is, if you're not at the table, you're probably on the menu. You know, if you're not sitting there, if you're not part of the decision making, then you're definitely on the table. You know, you're definitely on the menu. You're definitely there to, you know what I mean?
So you understand what our passion is when we come to these meetings.
Absolutely.
And I know you don't take it personal.
No, far from it.
So you understand our passion about 81, the whole history behind it, the segregation, demolishing our businesses and our homes and things like that, and displacing us. So you understand that would just bring back that memory to us.
Of course.
That it's going to be taken down, but yet and still our concern is about our placement, you know, our community, our children, and there's a lot of passion behind that. So I think you were speaking pertaining that as well.
And I would say, for the record, you know, I'd like to put it on the record with you guys, if it's nowhere else in the world, that I share the fears of the new 81 project. You know, I think that I am controlling a small portion of it through what I'm doing with my efforts, but you have the federal government involved, the state government involved, and even when people have good intentions, a lot of times stuff goes sideways anyway. And so it's I definitely understand why people are skeptical and anxious and angry, and I wouldn't encourage them to go to sleep. You know, I wouldn't tell them, okay, it's all going to be fine, don't worry about it, because I think how good it turns out to be depends on how active and engaged people get, and how, you know, the roundabout that was going to be behind MLK, you know, the community came together and said, this is something we don't want, and they stood together with one voice and said, this is a clear demand, we don't want this, and it changed. You know, so I think the biggest thing in politics as a whole for me is always apathy is the #1 thing. You know, I said to the lady tonight, if you yell at me, that's just you caring loudly. The only thing I don't like in politics is apathy, is people not caring, people not engaging, people not showing up, people not caring. If you care and you're angry, that's a positive. That's moving in the right direction for me. I hope I'm not talking too much. But,
no, you're good, because you spoke on Syracuse and how you came back.
Yeah.
And you saw racism and segregation.
Yeah.
And how the system is all set up. Speaking of that, you can see, like you said, you're speaking on a passion.
Yeah.
You know, across this country, there's a lot of gentrification going on in a lot of cities.
Yep.
So if you could speak on that, the gentrification, and how the aspect of this project would automatically readily put into our minds, black people's minds, that, oh, it's another operation of gentrification.
Yep. And I think that's a real fear. I think even from the city's perspective, there are, I use the analogy of a tide or waters rising, because that's how it is. There's only so much that city policy or things can control. Once it gets to be market economies, things are going to happen the way they're going to happen, right? So I would say, right, like we have a fine balance. If you have a neighborhood that's underinvested in, low quality housing, black mold, roaches, rats, that kind of stuff. If you increase the quality of the housing, it's going to be more expensive. And so to me, it's more like getting a pH balance right, or getting a recipe right, like not too much salt but not too little, or not too much pepper but not too little. Okay. It's more that kind of thing. We want investment, but we don't want to displace the people who are living here still, and that's a challenge, because as it becomes a nicer neighborhood, a more valuable neighborhood, the rents go up. It's harder for people to live there. So it's a balancing act, right? More than anything else. But I think that there are going to be pressures that come with. The biggest thing is the environmental impact that 81, the raised viaduct, has had on this community. This corridor right here where we're sitting has the second highest rates of asthma and heart disease in New York State, and that's running high for highest in the country.
Do you think that was part of systematic racism, gentrification, and how it was set up with 81? Because you did speak on that.
Yeah, definitely.
You said, what's the rate you said Syracuse being? Syracuse,
this corridor adjacent, what they're calling now the East Adams neighborhood, Pioneer Homes, Central Village, McKinney Manor, those have the second highest rates of asthma and heart disease. And I think, how to say it, I don't think it was intentional. I think they had to put it somewhere and they didn't care. Right? If they were trying to put it in DeWitt, people would organize and say, you see them right now, the PTA, oh, we're not going to take this.
Right.
I think African American folks, because of the history of, they did that when 81 was built. African Americans came out in huge numbers and raised placards and fought and united and locked arms and said, you will not do this. And it got steamrolled and they just pushed over them. And so I think there's a lot of people, in doing a lot of these community meetings, I had a woman say to me, I said, she said, you guys are going to do whatever you want to do, which is what the government always does.
Right.
And so I don't really care about your pictures or your thing, because we don't really care what you're talking about, because we know you're just going to do whatever you want to do, no matter how many cards we fill out or what we do.
Right.
And I understand that, right? Like you got 40 years of history staring you in the face where that's always been the case.
That's correct.
And so you have one individual who comes in to try to move the needle in the other direction. You can't expect people to be like, oh, this guy's different. He's not like every other government dude who's come down here and told us.
We're going to think the same.
Right.
We're going to think the same.
Oh, everything's going to be better. Oh, I believe this dude. Oh, the other dudes have been lying for the last 40, 50 years. Right. But this dude's different. Right. No, you got to take it that's what it is. So I think a lot of it is, I don't think it was like, oh yeah, let's destroy the black neighborhood. It was just like, we have to destroy some neighborhood. It's not going to be this one. It's not going to be that one.
Right.
So
ours, right?
I don't think it was as intentional, but I think it was malice, which is the same thing as intent, right? Like they just didn't care. So it's like, we have to put it somewhere. Let's put it through this neighborhood, because they're not our cousins. They're not our,
And you see, because the first thing I brought to you, and it was more of a joke, but you understood what I was saying.
Yeah.
About the bike lanes, about the bike lanes, and who is this for?
Yeah.
A lot of people are connecting this with upstate, the hospital.
Yeah.
Also Syracuse University. And we're looking at it like, are they just opening it up for them?
Right.
Right. And speaking on bike lanes, where Brixie you know,
Yeah.
was murdered,
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
unalived, right here, a little girl, baby girl, I think 11 years of age, you know,
Yes.
right, 2 blocks from 81.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
so our concern wouldn't be so much of a bike lane,
Yeah.
but more of
Right.
our people and our children.
Yes.
You know, if you wanted to, or Bob wanted to speak on that, but
No,
Y'all doing beautiful.
yeah, no, I think that's it. You know, I think I've had a lot of trouble getting traction when I come to the South Side and start talking about bike lanes.
you know what we saying though,
I
Joe.
do.
It's just the
I
concern
do.
how we.
Same thing, like I said about people, you know, coming up here. Oh yeah, things are gonna get better. Okay, this dude's gonna tell you, you know,
Right,
same thing.
right,
like you know, if you know, I grew up close enough to. You know, for me it was more what they call now Parkside Commons or whatever, you know, or those estates growing up as a kid. But if your concerns are there's a guy who's shooting up, passing out in the hallway outside my grandma's house, or there's a guy smoking a blunt outside my mom's window and she's getting the fumes and she can't breathe, and all these kind of concerns, but I care about a bike lane, right? So that's a natural response, you know. But I think, you know, and I heard the gentleman today raise, I've heard a lot of people say that the kayak launch is happening in Kirk Park seem like, okay, this isn't for us. Why shouldn't it be? You know what I mean? For me, it's like, you know, why should DeWitt have bike lanes but not the South Side?
Right.
Why should DeWitt have a kayak launch but not the South Side? I don't think those are strictly, I don't think having a nice bike ride is something only the white neighborhood should have, or white folks should have, and so yeah, it feels kind of low on the priority list when you're talking about will I be living here in 5 years. I think that's the biggest thing, right? But again, when it comes to SHA and the public housing and the you know, the plans to knock some down and build some new, there are federal guidelines put in place that there has to be one affordable unit for every unit knocked down.
Will there be affordable housing for low-income folks to come back when it's completed?
Yes, everyone who lives currently in this footprint will have a right to return at their 30% of income. So yes, HUD requires us to have the units for those current residents to come back.
Well, and there'll be enough?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Everyone that's here has to have a unit to come back. So we'll have I think 180 returnable units. Well, no, we'll have 600 returnable units, obviously, and then that's why we're going to 1,400 units, and then they'll be affordable and there'll be some market rate. But all 600 residents have to have a unit here to come back to.
There are federal rules that require them to replace every unit that's there with the same type of unit, and there's a right of first refusal from the people who currently live there to come back there. But again, what's on paper and what actually happens depends on how activated people in the community are.
That's why my question to you tonight was, have you had a representation from the community, or a representative or a leader? And you do it here in Tucker Missionary Baptist Church. Have pastors or any specific community leader? You understand what I'm saying? Spoke on our behalf, or because
I think it's funny, right? Having watched it for many years, I think once people get elevated to voices, the community kind of feels like it's not for them anymore in a lot of ways. You know what I'm saying? Like when people get hired to be official ambassadors, suddenly they don't feel like it. Right. So from my perspective, that's why I wanted to grab your number last time, and you have my cell. Like I want to spend more time talking to people who are still in the community, still live in the community, still have their ear to the street of what the community's concerns are, and to the best of my ability, you know, I think we do have some, you know, I think, like I said, I work a lot with Raekwon Pride, Raekwon Pride Green, Tara Harris, Sabrina Smalls, folks who still live in the footprint, folks who are still active, go to the neighborhood watch and talk to people that are living in Pioneer, that are living in McKinney, that are living in Central Village. But we could always do better, and we always need more leaders. You know what I mean? Like we need, you know, my vision of government, you know, when I ran for public office, it was, my campaign slogan was get involved, because my version of politics is not I'm going to fix your problems. It's like, you know what's going on, you tell me what's going on, and maybe we can come up with something together, because it's never going to be okay, I, Joe Driscoll, identify the problem. I know the problem better than the people who are living here, and I'm going to develop the solution, because that's never how it works. It never works well that way.
Okay.
Like, what we have to get over in politics in general, to me, is bringing it back to local, small scale, your city councilors, your neighborhood meetings, and kind of come together to say, let's identify the problem as a neighborhood together and come up with a solution together, you know. And so I have had some situations where government works like that, but again, when we go out and we do these meetings, you got people with 50 years of baggage, rightful baggage, right? Like I'm saying, I'm not blaming them, like, oh, they should be out here at every community meeting. Why should they be? They went to the community meetings in 1960 and nobody listened then. They went in 1970, nobody listened then. So you have a history of people being like, I don't really want to hear about what people are saying.
Right.
But if we can get over those bridges, you know, I know working with the state right now, you know, Tanisha's here, folks are listening, you know, and they're trying to do right. Like, I think more so in the construction of 81, the first time, nobody cared what anybody thought. And like, at least you have people now who are like, what do people think? Can you tell me? Like, we got this portal, you can write to us, tell us what you think. How do we do this right? Like, what does it look like to be right? Like, at one point tonight we have people saying, we don't want it to be housing because there's not enough space there. We don't want it to be a road because there's not enough space for a road. We don't want it to be a park because homeless people are going to be sleeping there. We don't want to, it's like, well, then what's it going to be? I mean, if it's not vacant land, if it's not green land, and it's not occupied land, like, what's it going to be? Like, we have to stop thinking about what are the problems and start moving towards what are the solutions. Like, what do we want to see? What do we want to do? And then we can work with our partners to try to make that happen. You know what I mean? But if we don't start out with at least what does it look like, what do we want to do, then it's never going to happen. Understood. We know that much. You know what I mean?
Yeah, understood.
Yeah.
Now, if you could give the date. You said October
19th. Yes, that's a Saturday, and we're trying to, I think we should be able to book black lights, trying to get brown skin, but the whole shebang, you know, barbecue, bouncy houses, all that good stuff. You know, we want to throw a proper neighborhood barbecue, cookout, fun time on October 19th, looking at Wilson Park. And the one thing that we've heard is when I do these presentations, people are asking questions that only DOT can answer. People are asking questions that only SHA can answer. So we're having all those entities come together, the city, SHA, Blueprint 15, DOT, all come together so that when people ask questions about the highway, they ask questions about the housing, we can have that forum all together and start having more of those where we can break down the silos, because to me that's the biggest challenge in politics, because it takes time, energy, attention to break down silos.
You're going to want us there. You're going to want the captain there.
Yes.
Definitely.
All day, every day. Absolutely. That's it. We need it. We need it. We need it more than anything else. That's the number one ingredient. That's like trying to make a stew without the chicken and the meat. You know what I mean? We need the real folks that are coming from the community to be there, and to the leaders to come through and raise their voices.
All right. Absolutely.
Yep.
All right. Thank you, Joe. You got something, Bubba? You good? All right.
Yep. Absolutely, bro. Thank you. Appreciate you guys.